Welcome to another episode of Cohesia Connect, Connecting Conversations. I am delighted to be with our guest today, Miriam Owusu. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Perfectly.
Yes, come
Perfectly.
on.
Couldn't
I
have
find that's
pronounced it
really
better.
important to pronounce people's names correctly. It's a real passion of mine. I think say it properly. And I think because especially growing up through school and you have different nationalities in the classroom, and too many times have I heard a teacher say, I'm just going to call you this because I can't say your name. It just is a bugbear for me.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I had teachers looking at my surname and just hesitating and not even bothering or attempting. So I am with you.
I
I'm
love
with you.
that
So
so,
thank you.
so much. You're welcome. Miriam, I always find it better when our guests kind of introduce a little bit about themselves through their own words. Would you mind sharing a little bit about you, what you do, where you're from, and anything else that's like a fun fact detail about Miriam?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, first and foremost. So, hello, everyone. My name is Miriam. As you could probably tell, I'm from London. I always say near the best football team in the world. So, I'll leave that for you to guess. I'll leave that for you to guess. And I currently work in a fintech company called, and in a nutshell, we enable businesses to automate their AP processes. And I am a success manager. So I have the amazing role of dealing with various different clients of ours, particularly accountancy firms who may purchase our software for their clients. And I'm their main point of contact in the business. So if they have any questions or queries, they come to me. Now, fun fact, I actually played football from when I was in school through to university, so I am pretty good, if I say so.
I love it. Yeah. I was like the football kind of drop in sign there earlier. I was just like, where's this going? Now this makes sense. So you are actually an avid football like player yourself and fan, a legit one
Yeah,
too. I love that.
I'm trying to get my cardio back up. I'm on a weight loss journey, but once I'm there, I'll probably be the new Ronaldo,
Oh, I
hopefully.
love it. That's what I want it. So, do we have aspirations to join the Lions at any point?
Possibly. Possibly. We'll see where God takes us. We'll see what doors open. But yeah, that's a bit about myself.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm so excited to kind of hear a bit about your story. You shared that you are in the tech space. Was that
Yeah.
always the way for you? How did you get into this environment and kind of what's been the journey for you? Is this what you always wanted to do? What's the story behind it?
Yeah, great question. So I actually studied law at university. So law was always the end destination. However, whilst I was at university, as we all do, you want to survive. And the first day I got to university, there were two things that I was looking for: a church home, and a job. And that's where I stepped into the world of sales. So I actually worked at Carphone Warehouse, and that evolved into me going into being a real estate agent for one of the top estate agents in London. So, and then eventually it got to a point where I wanted to do more. I was always being told that, Miriam, you're able to really build a great rapport with people. You're able to speak to people. And if you can add value or sell a product or service alongside that, sales is the right place for you. And I think in sales, there's so much to it. But the fact that
Mm,
I've got a legal background, I'm always mindful of compliance, how you sell, not mis-selling. And eventually, I started to look at tech. So there was a period where, even at university, there was a lot of modules around tech software. And that's what piqued my interest. So, coupled with me going into sales, I then eventually found my way into financial technology. And I've been in this industry for about 3 years now. And it's been life changing, honestly.
I love that. And I love that you've already alluded to kind of there's been a journey there for you. Did you imagine yourself kind of progressing? Like you said, you had law was your first kind of port of call, and now you're in
Yeah.
tech, and not just tech. Like you find yourself from what we've been speaking about your LinkedIn, and we will be sharing all of that afterwards so people can connect with you as well. But is this the platforms that you thought you would be finding yourself in? And you mentioned that there's been a lot of open doors. And I think 3 years is still quite a short space of time to see kind of like an upward trajectory. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, it is. a lot has transpired in the last 3 years. From I graduated back in 2019, and then come 2024, I'm doing great, great things, but I could only put it down to God. So tech is not an easy industry to be in. It's phenomenal. It's very forward focused. It's very innovative, which is always a blessing.
Mm,
But to be honest, there's a lack of diversity still in the industry. And when I was finding my way into tech, I saw that, and it was very disheartening. But then I lent on God. I started to trust in God and say things like, God, if it's your will for me to come into this industry, then let your will be done. And doors started to open. I started to connect with various different people who were already in the industry, and they were able to give me that right advice, from tailoring my CV to the right jobs that I was looking for, and even coming into the industry, working at the company I'm in now. I was in another tech company before, but because of the relationships I built, it was a seamless process. It
mm,
wasn't as hard compared to when I was breaking through. And one of the big things that I am passionate about is using your leverage to, catapult your career.
mm,
And I
mm.
think particularly as ethnic minorities, if we build our network, spend time with our network and cultivate that alongside having God with us, the doors that will open will honestly be life changing. I think that's what has happened with my journey, and my journey's still going on. But my network has really got me to where I am today.
That's so encouraging, and it's so interesting that you're sharing kind of just some of the really key defining factors for your journey and your trajectory. Because my business partner and I, Ivelka, who Miriam also knows, we've been sharing really kind of understanding success and faith, and is there kind of like a relationship between them, and what does success look like, and what are the contributing factors sometimes. And already I feel like, even from what you said, both of those have been at play. You've
Yeah.
been speaking about, really, you have been able to stand at it, or stand in a room, or you've been given a seat at a table, which is already a success. But it's not because you just relied on a dream and you just happened to fall into it. Clearly you've done the work, but also there's this other element for yourself. In which way have you found kind of, faith is clearly something that's been quite defining in this process for you? What is that journey? Has it always been like that for you? What has been your journey with that, in terms of the space of where faith occupies, and where you've seen kind of materialized success personally for you has kind of been taking place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I've always been a Christian. I was born and raised in a Pentecostal church. My family are from Ghana, so it was a typical prayerful church. We're
Mm.
praying for 10, 20 hours a day.
Wow,
But
that is intense.
yeah, Pentecostal churches are very much focused on prayers, which is a blessing, because I think as I've grown up in my faith, I've realized the power of prayers. But there has been times where my faith has dwindled. There has been times where I've disconnected with God. And one of those times was when I was in a long-term relationship. So I was actually in a 12-year relationship, which ended 2 years ago. And I'm not going to lie, my faith was little to none, particularly towards the end, because I had no relationship with God the same way when I came in. And that was just a real defining moment for me, because I hit rock bottom. Like, the woman that you're seeing me as now was not the woman I was 2 years ago. I was almost a shell of myself, and when you get to that point in life, there's a scripture that says those who are humbled will be exalted. For me, what that looked like was, I realized that there was no one that could take me out of that space but God, and I had to humble myself to God, and in doing so, I was able to lean on him, trust in him, and that's where I was able to bring back my faith again. And honestly, it's just been, especially as a Christian, like, there's going to be times, especially as Christian, where we're tested. We're not exempt from that. But coming out of that, right, I've learned how to trust in God again and almost test God. There's times where I take the word to God and I'm like, God, well, you said this, you know, you said this in the word. like, show me. It's almost like you're speaking to God on the most realist, open and honest way, and God has shown me. To give you an example, um, no one in my family owns a home, right? And from being at university, working in sales, one of my dreams was to purchase my home, right? And I trusted God. I lent on God. And last year I was working just relentlessly in order to get to that dream. And again, I trusted him. I lent on him. I gave everything. I just availed myself to him. And in November, I was able to bring that goal into fruition. That manifested, and I was able to see that happen in real life. And I think sometimes it's not easy to trust in God when you don't see it with your naked eye, but praying, trusting God, having faith, and seeing things like that come to life, you've got enough evidence to never ever question God again, and He's shown me that multiple times, not only in my personal life, but even in terms of my career. When I've gone to him and I was like, God, what do you want me to do? Doors have opened. And because I've had that faith and I've trusted him, doors have opened. So along the journey, yes, my faith has dwindled, but there's been moments where, because I've trusted in him, he's given me the evidence to always remember where he's brought me from. So now, how can I not believe in God? How can I not trust in God? How can I not have faith? Because he's already proven it to me. If you trust in me, there's a scripture that I always hold dear. If you have faith as small as a mustard seed and you say to the mountain, move, it will move. And
Mm-mm.
the words are not just on paper, they're real. And there's been times I've had small faith, but that little faith has opened doors. So, yeah.
That's so mind blowing and encouraging. I love what you shared about, and I think many can resonate with that. Like, you've clearly broken boundaries. You're the first to have a home, and I love also, so like, there is clearly, your faith is incredibly strong, and I imagine anyone or others that come along this conversation will be encouraged to see, will probably want to find out. That's interesting how that has kind of played such a role in this process, but also you've not shied away from the reality that it's also taken work and the grit to accompany both that belief and the hard work and the kind of this, there was a part you had to play in engaging with that to get where you are now. And that's really, really powerful. I just want to take a little step back from what you shared. You said you were in a relationship for 12 years, which is a long time. I know many of our guests probably, and our viewers will resonate with that experience of being in something for a long time. What's what did you feel kind of like in that whole process of the 12 years from where you started, and you made the decision to come out of it? What did you notice about the transformation of yourself in that period?
Yeah. I mean, to put into perspective, I'm 28 now, and that relationship ended when I was 26. So I was young when I got into that relationship. I didn't know myself. I didn't
Mm,
love myself. I
mm,
was also growing in my relationship with God, right? So there were times in that relationship where I felt convicted. I felt like some of the things that I was doing, I wasn't ever involved in crime, but when you're in a relationship, there's some boundaries or lines you may be tempted to cross. And I would question myself, right? So that was always
mm,
something that I was like battling with. And I think that's what drew me at times away from God. But being able to grow as a woman, grow as a person, I then started to realize what God wanted for me. And I mean, it was difficult. When you get to the point where you humble yourself and realize what you want for your life is different to what God wants, that's not easy to accept. And I had to face that reality because being in a relationship for 12 years, that's almost like a marriage. My future was set. I could see everything. I could
mm.
see the children. I could see the house. I could see everything. Even
Yeah.
in terms of buying a property, like there were conversations about coming together about that. So although our lives we were young, we were deep into it. But then towards the end, I lost myself, and God was revealing to me in little pieces where He wanted to take me. And unfortunately, that relationship wasn't part of that equation. So, as difficult as it was, I had to leave. And in doing that, doors have opened. You know, my family have said, they've even gone as far as saying, with all due respect, Miriam, you wouldn't be where you are today had you still been in that relationship. There were certain things that I probably, not that I was ever prevented from doing certain things, but I just couldn't see it because I was so fixated on someone else. You know, when you're in a relationship,
Mm,
as you know, Carla, like, you're selfless. And the person I am, sometimes I give more to my own detriment. You know, I've had to learn about things like codependency.
mm, mm,
You
mm.
know, I've had to learn about what being being like part of a single parent home meant and how it impacted me indirectly. I've watched my mum single handedly raise 7 children on her own,
7?
you know,
Wow.
yeah, all in the UK. And all of these things have impacted me and that impacted that relationship. So coming out of that, I've been able to identify my trauma, look at myself introspectively, on a real level, go to God and then just really just show him like, God, I want you to pull out things that led me to get to that point and I never want to be at that point again. And he's had to really show me stuff. He's showing me stuff as we speak, you know, and as a result, there's mistakes that I will never make again. As a result, I've been able to go to therapy and be the woman I am today, smile the way I'm smiling. And people don't see the trauma or what I've been through when they look at my face, you know. But we all have a story, we all have a journey. But that's the beauty of being with God. He doesn't he doesn't let you wear your pain. You know, you're a new being in God when you're in his presence. And everything that people are seeing of me today is a woman that has really had to be on a journey with God and rebuild herself. So yeah.
That's incredible. And I think I really appreciate and respect just how candid you are about, whether people may not subscribe to the faith element, but also if we were to look at just in general, there's a reality of what happens when we are really entrenched in certain types of relationships that impact the outcome of the person we're becoming. It impacts the trajectory of whether or not our potential is really being fulfilled. And I think that's a question. I know we're speaking that was a romantic relationship, almost like a life planning. This is a life companion relationship you're speaking about there. But even I feel similarly those principles could be adopted when we look at whoever we allow into our inner circle, even with good friendships. I think my husband always says about like the 5 people, and he learned this from someone else. This is not his saying, but he is the one that kind of introduced me to the saying that says that the 5 people that you spend the most time with is what your life is going to look like. Are you happy with that? Are you happy with that? And all that is to kind of allude to is there is a lot of influence that we, who are the gatekeepers of our lives, have got the responsibility to kind of mind. What am I going to allow into my space? Is this going to build me, edify me, and take me through to the place where I feel what's placed inside of me is going to come out in a good way? Or is it not? Or is it going to be stagnant? Because it's not, if it's and being stagnant, we may as well just be regressing, really. And there's also the element of like your ability and your success is never ever just for yourself. Your success is normally because when you reach the destinations you're supposed to, when you are in your element of occupying spaces you're supposed to, like for example, we've already mentioned, you are occupying a really, really rare space in tech as a woman of ethnicity and as a woman. That's not just for you. That is about breaking boundaries for others to come after you. That is about creating impact on a much wider scale than just for ourselves. Does that make sense? And even relationships can determine that. Even relationships can influence that. And I really appreciate your honesty in terms of like, I needed to deal with all of this stuff. If I look at why am I in this relationship for now, how many times do we really take stock as to why we allow certain people into our lives or why we allow ourselves to stay in certain environments? And again, this is not a diss or a slight against those people. This is more to do with if you are aware of yourself and a sense of self-knowledge and honesty with yourself, we need to be more intentional about that's good self-care. Am I putting myself in the position where goodness, kindness, and just the stuff that I know is inside of me is going to be nurtured well and it's going to come out in a good place? I have my part to play in that too. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, to your husband's point, like, whoever's in your network or whoever's around you will shape your life. It really will. And I've been blessed enough to have that realization early, and as a result, I'm intentional of who I'm around in every capacity,
Hmm.
even
Hmm.
in church, you know, who I'm fellowshipping with. There's people that can draw you closer to God, or there's people that can draw you away from God. They may be a Christian, but if you were to look at their fruits, so it's so important. And I take that same stance and I take that very, very seriously. And I think, as not only as people of faith, but just as human beings, I think it's so important to really take time, whether it's quarterly, the same way some businesses have quarterly reviews or
Yeah.
yearly reviews. Take that time to reflect and do an audit of your life. Look at who's around you. I've recently discovered that whole thing around people energizing you and depleting you, and it's real. There's a science to it. If you look at your life, there are certain people that you have a phone call with. By the time you get off, you're drained. You're mentally
Yeah.
drained.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that they're bad people, but you've got to really kind of think, are these people taking me to a happy place in life? And when we think about faith, right, we've all got free will. So God is not going to drag you into certain places or drag you away. He may speak to you,
Yeah. Yeah.
but we have that responsibility to look after our life. And in doing so and taking those little things seriously, it could change your life. And that's something that I not only hold dearly to myself, but I pass that on to my siblings. I've got four younger siblings after me, and my sister, for example, she's going to turn 20 in the next couple of days, and I share this with her. And this is information that she'll be able to have for the rest of her life. So yeah, it's so important. It's so important.
I love that, and I think that's just such an important thing to hold on to so much. When you said about people that energize you or deplete you, I mean, if we were to just look at it from that perspective, I think already your mind will be firing off all of the kind of advice like, actually, yes, this interaction, why does it make me feel like that? And we need to evaluate what those boundaries are. That doesn't all, sometimes that will mean like either removing yourself entirely, but other times it's actually about like, but this is only happening because I'm letting it happen. And that's a new responsibility to engage with as well. It's like, what boundaries am I putting up? Is it okay that I share this much of myself with that particular person or with that space that actually is helpful to me? Or is there a different boundary I should be putting, but still enjoy the moment? And that's something I think we're not taught to be intentional about. So I love that you said that. That is really, really good. Now, we've been speaking about just your life, which has been incredible. And I think what's been resounding is really like there is two strong elements at play here. It's both success and it's faith. In your view, and on the journey that you've been on, what would you define in your world would be success or
Yeah,
ideas of success?
yeah, that's a phenomenal question. And it's a question that I ask myself daily, because I'll get onto what I view as success, but the reason why I
Hmm.
ask myself daily is because social media, the world can dictate what you see as success. So it's
Hmm.
important that you understand what does success look like to you.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I am yet to be a mother, and for me, I see success as a woman or a person who is, one, exhibiting the fruits of the spirit. So love, peace, kindness, all of those things. That's first and foremost. And I would say I'm starting to understand. Working in sales is not. It's very money commission based, right? So you can get driven by that money element, but I'm starting to understand that it's more than just money. What impact or value are you adding? Like, even in my current company that I work for, you could speak to various different people and they'll be able to, they may not know I'm a Christian, they may not know about my faith, but what they can say is that Miriam's kind, she's respectful. They will say certain things, and for me, that's successful. It may not be equating to money, but I'm living by God's word. you know One of the things that I'm passionate about is bringing more black people into tech, trying to pave a way, however that looks like, whether it's putting my face out there so people know, okay, there's someone that looks like me, I've got that visibility.
Hmm. Hmm.
So for me, success in that regard is making an impact, making a genuine impact um, to people's lives. Like this life, we're blessed to be waking up every day, living and breathing. And for me, it's something to not take for granted. So I always want to add value. I always want to make an impact, however little, however small it is. Yesterday, for example, I attended an event by a company called XLP, and their whole organization is based on giving back to young people who have had hardships in life. And I spoke to a young woman, and I posted it on LinkedIn, who literally said to me, had it not been for XLP, this organization, I wouldn't be alive today.
Wow.
And it hit me because it just shows how important it is to live life of intention. And I may not be an organization, right, like XLP, but I'm a person that can also add value. And I was able to just give her flowers and just say, your journey is commendable, it's inspiring. And she was able to recognize that herself. But for me, success is really adding value. It's changing people's lives. And when I see organizations like that making a real impact, it aligns with my values. The company I work for, we deal with automating approval processes, right? And why is that important, or why could that be successful? So I speak to various different businesses on a daily basis who may say, prior to us using this software, because we didn't have the automation process, there was a lot of AP fraud, where let's say somebody may be forging a fake invoice or a fake purchase order and paying themselves out of the business's account. But because we have your software in place, we now have a visibility of what's being approved, what's happening. That's success because our software is literally adding value to businesses. So for me, I think success is making an impact, being aligned with the fruits of the spirit, and just adding value and trying to do your bit to love your neighbor, I guess, as yourself.
Mm,
So
mm,
yeah.
mm. I love that. Thank you so, so much for sharing that. It's just been really beautiful to hear like the honesty of your journey and the honesty of your aspirations too. If you could say to the young Miriam, what would be one piece of advice you would say to her now that you have come kind of to the other side of, I think, just one season of your life? Like you said, you're young, there is still a wonderful life ahead of you of joy to come, and like heights and achievements and accomplishments, which I believe will absolutely come your way. One piece of advice that you would say to the young Miriam who was at the other side at the start of this story, what would you say to her?
Yeah. It's a scripture that I always say to myself, and I've got it on my mirror, and that is, seek the kingdom of the Lord first, and all things shall be added. And all things being your career, let's be real, money, your partner. Like, there's been times in my life where I haven't put God first. I put those other things first, relationships, money, and my life was different, right? But when you God, seek God's face on a daily basis, everything else, you don't need to worry. There's going to be times where things will be shaken. There's going to be seasons of your life where you may even question God, even as you develop your faith. But as long as you seek Him, it's almost like, I call it Godfidence. You've got God and you've got this confidence. You will walk differently. You may face adversities, you may face difficulties. Like, there's times where I question, I mean, we all have, or sometimes may have, imposter syndrome. I question whether, I mean, am I okay? Am I worthy of being here? But when
Am
you've
I
got God,
qualified to be in the room? Yeah.
am I qualified? Am I qualified for, let's be real, but when you've got God, when you seek God, you don't need to worry about that. Everything else will fall into place. So that's what I would honestly tell my younger self, who was at times anxious, um, worried, scared. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's such a perfect place to kind of end this incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Miriam. And I know that anyone that comes across this chat will resonate with so many pearls of wisdom that you shared, and encouragement that there is a lot of hope. There is space for you, and there is such a value in some of these really, really other wider things that can contribute to our success walk through our faith. Thank you so much, Miriam. We wish you all of the best, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.